everyone, my name is Paige and today I'm going to be talking about the worst books I read in 2019. As of today, I've read 119 books and I pretty much don't think I'm going to be reading any more before the end of the year. So I'm going to be talking about the worst books I read, and actually there were quite a few of them. I read a lot of really good books at the end of the year, but towards the beginning and middle of the year there were just a bunch of duds that I really didn't like. And there were some that I had to read for school that I didn't really like, which happens almost every single year. But I'm very excited to be talking about these and to talk about why I hated them, so let's just jump right into this. So one of the first books I read this year and really hated was Child of the Iago, and this is by Arthur Morrison. I had to read this for one of my classes in my master's program, and none of us really enjoyed it. It's one of those books that is just so old, and I think maybe I had to analyze it too much and I didn't really understand the story and didn't like it. During that class on one of our field trips, we got to go to the area that it was talking about in the book, but even then I was still kind of like, this isn't for me. I think I even had to write a paper on it and really didn't enjoy that. So for this one, it was one of those ones that I just had to read for a required reading and try to get it over with as quickly as possible. Another one that I also had to read for a class and one that I didn't enjoy was The People of the Abyss, and this is by Jack London. Again, yet another one I really didn't enjoy and didn't fully understand. I just didn't care about the story, and again, no one in my class really enjoyed it. Again, I think I had to write a paper for it, and honestly, whenever I say that, I'm like, man, how did I even pass my master's? But I read it and I hated it. That's it. Okay, and then this one is the last one that I had to do for a required reading for school, and that was London Overground by Ian Sinclair. Previously, before reading this book, we had to read a short story or something that Ian Sinclair had written, again for this same class, and I didn't enjoy his writing. I feel like he's just so I don't know, it's like he thinks too highly of himself, and when he writes, I'm just like, I don't care. I don't care about you. So this book, when he was talking about this journey that he took walking the entire London Overground, I was like, I just don't care about anything that he's writing about. Again, it was kind of cool because we did walk around some of the areas that he also walked around, and I also lived right against the London Overground train tracks by Shepherd's Bush. So every single day I saw the London Overground go by, but it still was just oh my god, I'm so sick of reading about the London Overground. So this one I also hated. Another one that I read that I was actually recommended to use for inspiration for the story that I was writing to end out my master's. We had to write a 10,000 word story for our dissertation, and it was From Hell by Alan Moore. My advisor really wanted me to read this because she thought it would be helpful because I was originally going to write about churches, and while I did write about churches, eventually in my story I'm focusing specifically on Westminster Abbey because my two characters meet there and sort of fall in love there. I really didn't like this story because it's about Jack the Ripper, and I just really don't have any interest in that, and there was this whole reimagined plot where Queen Victoria actually was sending Jack the Ripper out to kill people, and I don't know, it just was this is so overblown and didn't make any sense to me, and I didn't really like the art style in it either. And I know Alan Moore is just kind of crazy anyway. I mean, I love Watchmen and I love V for Vendetta, but this was just not for me. So this next one I read was one that kind of started a trend for me this year, where I was picking up these short and sweet contemporary new adult / adult romance books, and this one was called Seduced by a Stranger by Brenda Jackson, and I hated it a whole lot. I don't exactly remember why I hated it. I think there was a lot of misogyny and stuff going on in the book, and I was looking at my review on Goodreads for this and all I wrote was cringe, so I'm assuming there was something at the end that just really didn't sit well with me. But because I hated it so much, I kind of just put it out of my mind, so all I remember is really not liking it. Another one that I read and really didn't like was Voices. This is The Final Hours of Joan of Arc by David Eliot. It's poetry, and I just don't like poetry. So many people, whenever I say this, are like, oh, well, you should try blah 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 or blah blah blah, and I'm like, no, I just don't like it. It's not for me. That'd be like if someone said oh, I hate contemporary romance, and they were like, well, try this book. No, I just don't like it, so I didn't really click with this at all. I like the story of Joan of Arc. I think that's very interesting, and actually this was one of 2 poetry novels that I read about Joan of Arc this year, but I just there's just something about poetry that totally goes over my head, and I don't understand the depth of it at all, and it just isn't for me. So this one was not good. Okay, so this next one I actually got from the publisher because I specifically asked them for it, and I went into it knowing that my standards would be pretty low, and that was Again But Better by Christine Riccio. Ricio? I've never read a book by a YouTuber before. I've read books by like influencers and celebrities before, and in the past, mostly when I was reading those, I was in high school, so my standards were a lot lower for like the quality of stuff I was reading. But these days I'm like, man, I just don't think these people are good writers. Or, you know, if it is really good, they probably have a ghostwriter. But honestly, there were so many times when I was reading this that I was making fun of it. I would like nudge my boyfriend and be like, can you believe like this sentence or whatever? So I mean, I got through it and I was entertained because of how bad it was. But also the other problem for me too was like, because I was living in London and at the time when I was kind of reading it, and the characters just act so obnoxious. It's like, oh my god, a big red bus. Like, please stop. American authors, please stop writing like that because it is so like condescending and annoying. And I've mentioned this before in a video I filmed earlier this year. Like, I've brought people to London who had never been there before and none of them said stuff like that. I think the writing just felt really immature to me. I didn't connect with the characters. I thought the story was kind of bleh. Ultimately, I was disappointed by this one because I was excited to read it because it was like based in London and this girl, like, you know, obviously can go back in time and whatever, but I felt like just the ending of the story was kind of like, huh? This next one I read is Just My Luck by Jennifer Honeyburn. This is another one that I got from the publisher. I'm always interested in books that are kind of set in like tropical climates and like Hawaii and stuff like that because, I mean, I live in Southern California, but I'm always wanting to go back to Hawaii and I just think that's like super interesting and really cool way to like write. But this book, I mean, it was so unforgettable and so bland. Like, I just, again, didn't care about the characters. I didn't care about the plot. I honestly only finished it because it was so short and I just breezed right through it, but I was really disappointed. Another one that I was ultimately more disappointed this year than like disgusted by or anything was The Royal Runaway by Lindsay Emery. I had such high hopes for this one because I love romances that have to do with royalty or anything really to do with royalty, so I had really high hopes and I got this one, I guess, super cheap on my Kindle and was reading it, but the whole time I was just like, I just don't care about these people and these characters are just so like annoying and these situations would never happen and I didn't feel the connection with the romance at all or anything, so the whole time I was reading it I was like, why am I suffering through this? It has a really great cover though. I have to say that's probably the reason why I bought the book because I was like, wow, that cover is so cool. Yet another one that I read that I was really disappointed by was Viable Threat by Julie Rowe. For a second, let's just talk about this cover. It is so unrealistic, but also like frightening, like how muscular he is. I don't know. So originally I had been looking for books where it had to do with like a guard and he's like guarding a woman and they fall in love. I don't know why I was looking for books like that. I think maybe because I had just come out of watching Bodyguard, which was on Netflix and it had Richard Madden in it, and I just really love that show. So I was kind of looking for books that kind of had something to do with that, where it was like security and falling in love and like forbidden romance and stuff like that, but this book really let me down. These people fell in love within like 2 hours of knowing each other. I think they escaped death like 3 or 4 times, and in those 3 or 4 times, I think 3 of them were explosions, and I was like, oh my god, this is so unrealistic, like this would never happen. There was biohazardous terrorism going on, and it just was like, no. I guess it's an entire series and I just stopped after the first one because I was like, I can't stand this. Another one that I read this year and was disappointed by was Prince Charming by Rachel Hawkins. I'm also gonna kind of tack on Her Royal Highness to this one because both of them I read back to back and just really didn't like them. I guess a lot of people liked Her Royal Highness better than Prince Charming, but both of them just were so unforgettable to me, and I feel like Prince Charming especially, like, honestly, I couldn't even tell you the main character of the guy after reading it. I think I even mentioned that in one of my wrap-ups that I was like, I don't even know what his name was. Like, that's how unforgettable they were. Again, not the main characters were annoying, but the side characters were, or like background characters, and the whole situation was just so weird, and I was like, I just can't get into this. And I think I've tried to read stuff by Rachel Hawkins before and her writing just isn't for me, so I think it might have been that situation more than the story itself. But again, ultimately, I was totally disappointed. Another one that I had really high hopes for this year was City of Ghosts by V.E. Schwab. I have to say there is one thing I liked about this book, and that was the fact that it was set in Scotland, and I read this after I had taken my trip to Scotland. I really appreciated the way that V.E. Schwab clearly did a lot of research and like spent time in Scotland, I'm assuming, because the places and everything were really well well done the way that she described them, and I was like, oh yeah, I've been there, and like I know exactly what she's talking about. But I thought the story was a little weird. It definitely wasn't the age level for me. I know this is like supposed to be a middle grade series, but sometimes I really like middle grade, so I don't know what it was with this one. I think maybe it was like the paranormal aspect of it, and I don't read a lot of books like that, but it was just boring. I know this one's a series as well, and I am not going to continue it because I really didn't like it. Another one that I had gotten actually a couple years ago at Y'all West was To Be Honest by Maggie Ann Martin. I read Dumplin' earlier this year, either earlier this year or at the very end of last year, and really enjoyed it, and I really love the Netflix movie, so I thought maybe this will be like the perfect thing to read after that. No, I really didn't like this. I thought the writing wasn't very good. I thought the story was, again, boring and triggering for some people, and I feel like nothing was really resolved in this, so I was just kind of like, be gone. So this next one I actually started out really liking, and then it was like the more I read it, the more I was disappointed by it, and that's Stepsister by Jennifer Donnelly. How do I begin to talk about this book? The writing style was weird. I really had to get used to that. I feel like because the writing style was so strange, I couldn't get into the story. The characters were very weird. Like, I don't know, the entire time I was reading this, I was like, huh. And it was something that I flew through the first half of it, and then the last half I was just like, okay, I really don't care about these people. Obviously there was like a redemption arc within this, but I can't even begin to explain to you what it was because it was so unforgettable. So yeah. Earlier this year there was a month where I read like 28 books, and in that month I was trying to read like short little Avon or Harlequin romances that would kind of get me to my goal. And one of those ones that I read was His Majesty's Temporary Bride. And this is by Annie West. First of all, again, a really weird cover. Like this girl looks like a Barbie doll. I don't know why that picture was chosen, but it's weird. Every time I was reading this book I was like, oh my god, like every time I closed it. This one and the book that I'm going to be talking about next had huge problems with like misogyny and girls that were just kind of like walked all over, and I really didn't like that. I feel like more and more lately the new adult and adult romances I read, the female characters are just like really awesome and amazing and like stick up for themselves, but these older ones are just so like archaic and try to fit into these like stupid roles that the men try to assign them. I don't know, the whole thing I was like, ugh, this is so not feminist, and I only picked it up to try to reach my 30 books goal for that month, and it ended up just slowing me down, and I really didn't like it. So the one after that was His Dracone Runaway Bride, and this is by Tara Pammy. Again, same thing. The girl was walked all over by the man. He was very misogynistic. He controlled her a lot. I remember that, and that was like really disturbing to me. The romance was just boring. Like, they had this whole backstory, I guess, but I was like, I just don't care. I mean, to like put it lightly, I'm never gonna read anything by this author again because I was so just like, ew. We're coming up on the last couple here. So this second to last one I read, I also got from the publisher as an e-arc. I think I requested it on NetGalley. And that was 10 Blind Dates by Ashley Elston. I found this book to be immature. I'm thinking maybe it was for like a younger young adult audience. Not middle grade, but just like, let's say you're like a freshman in high school or something. And I think if I was still a freshman in high school or something like that, maybe I would have enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy it. I thought it was boring. It had a really great premise, like this girl, you know, her family setting her up on 10 blind dates. Like, that's really fun and really cool, but ultimately it just really fell flat for me. I didn't like the main character. I thought the romance that she ended up falling into was kind of boring and very like cookie cutter and something I'd seen before in a lot of other books. I appreciated that it was a holiday romance because I don't read a lot of those, and I wish I did read more of them because I actually really like them. So that was one part of it that I really enjoyed, but otherwise it was like every time someone talked in that book I was like, shut up. So then this last book I read was Royal Holiday by Jasmine Guillory, and again, it was another one of those books where an American goes to London and is like totally awed and surprised by everything there, and it's just like, oh my god, get over yourself. You're like a 45-year-old woman. There were so many instances in this when she was talking to like the love interest where it was like written, they laughed, and I was like, but why are they laughing? It's not funny. Nothing is funny. She runs into the Queen of England just on a whim. That would never ever happen. So there were just so many unrealistic things going on, and it was a holiday romance, so I guess I liked that, but otherwise I was like, okay, why? So I think my lesson learned this year has been like, romance has really let me down in books, not my own personal romance with my boyfriend. Hi, babe. But honestly, like, there were so many books, and I think this is why I started reading more fantasy, and I really liked the romances that they had in those books because there was just more going on than the actual romance, because I was just so sick of reading about people who were like falling in love and like they're so annoying and ugh, whatever. I think a lot of romances in these books are just, they are bland. So I think next year what I'm gonna do is stop buying like these really cheap Amazon Kindle books that have a premise that I think I'm gonna enjoy and then I end up not liking. So I'm gonna stop trying to do that because number one, it's a waste of money, it's a waste of time, and then I won't have like super long lists like this to talk about at the end of the year. So anyway, those were my worst books of 2019. Again, hopefully next year this list won't be as long. But if there are any terrible books that you read this year, definitely let me know because I always actually enjoy hearing that, especially if it's books that I haven't read, because then I know like maybe I shouldn't buy them or check them out from the library or listen to them on audiobook because again, it's like a waste of time for me. Also down in the links below, you can find me on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, and Goodreads, which I've recently been adding to all my videos, so definitely check me out there. You can see like a bunch of old reviews that I don't even remember writing and new ones that I never write anymore. And as always, you know, if you want to protect your really great books that you read this year, definitely you can find a link down below for the book sleeves that my mom and I sell in our shop. There's also a mysterious coupon code down there for you to use when you go to checkout. All the information for that will be down below. You can find everything down there. As always, we like seeing these out in the wild. We love sending them out to people, so definitely pick one up. And I hope you guys had a really great reading year. Coming up in my next video, I'm going to be talking about just like different reading habits and stuff that I had this year. I have a whole list of questions that I'm going to answer. It was actually something from a tag that I found on Tumblr, and I was answering a bunch of them there anyway, so I figured I might as well make a video. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye!